Hello there. Welcome to season 2, can you believe it, of the podcast that will tell you all about everything you need to know about funerals, even if you don't need to know that you need to know it. You are listening to Not If, But When. My name's Kirsty Atherton. I am an independent celebrant and I work in the northwest of England.
And hello, I'm Lindsay Conquest. I'm also an independent celebrant and I am based in Bedfordshire.
So at the end of season 1 in our finale, we got a little bit overexcited with ourselves and we promised you that the first episode of season 2 was about inclusivity. However, the last episode of season 1 was about language, and there was a subject we wanted to discuss in that podcast episode. But because we both got a little bit overexcited, we completely forgot to mention. And
We
it's
spoke
so
for a
pressing.
long time, didn't we?
It's such a pressing thing, isn't it? It's such a big issue. And
Yeah.
as we signed off, we were like, oh, we didn't even mention that. So this is now episode 1 of season 2, and we are going to talk about celebration of life. Lindsay, kick us off.
Yeah, I'm going to kick you off with a quote from a blog post. It's the opening quote of a blog post by somebody called Rondi Adamson. He's a Canadian writer, and we will put the link to his blog within our podcast. So he starts. The term celebration of life has entered my personal turns of phrase I hate gallery. I understand the sentiment behind the perky spin, but I feel rather tyrannised by the double speak. You should laugh and tell jokes and wear bright colours. It's a party. Yay. Someone you love is dead and you will never talk to them again. Now get in line for a whack at the pinata.
It just ends so beautifully. A
It
whack of a
does.
pinata,
It
doesn't
does.
it?
And it's a
Yeah.
great blog post, and I definitely recommend you going to have a read because it just talks about his journey through grief and his mother's funeral and his dad's funeral, where at one time it was we spoke or that everyone spoke about more as a funeral, and then he was pushed more in lines of terms of celebration of life when his mother had died, and it just talks about his journey and his views on that, which very much mirror our own, don't they, Kirsty?
They do. It's another thing that you and I both have shared strong feelings about, isn't it, as a
Yeah.
term? I understand why people use it. I
Hmm.
get why people use it. But I think like we talked about in the language episode, I think in using it, people don't necessarily acknowledge the undercurrent of what they're saying.
No.
So I know you had a direct experience of this, didn't you, where somebody you were working with was sort of quite explicit about her problem with it.
Yes.
Are you okay to share that, Linz?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember it was a while ago now, actually, a conversation with a lady, and I sat down with her for our sort of meeting to talk about her husband's funeral. And she said to me, she said, "Oh, she said, I know people are saying that it's a celebration of life, and that we should be celebrating." And she said, I don't want to celebrate. Why
Mm.
should I celebrate? I want him here with me. I don't
Yeah,
in any way, shape or form feel like celebrating right now.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's the first person that's really sort of vocalized that with me. And I just thought, how many other people are feeling unnecessary pressure
Yeah.
to be fun and celebratory at a time when, do you know what, it's actually okay and quite normal to be sad and
And also a bit
devastated.
weird if you're not,
Yeah,
even when
exactly.
someone's death comes after a really long and difficult illness, and there is that sense of relief in you that, they aren't suffering anymore,
Yeah,
that things have come to an end. Even when you've got that relief, you're still sad.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
and there has to be space for that. The
yeah,
worry is, I mean, I always say, and I'm sure that you would say similar to people you work with, that every single funeral has celebratory elements in it, because the fact that, I mean, even if it was the most problematic person in the world, the fact that you've actually managed to be born and live a human life is an astonishing achievement.
Yeah.
Um, so there are things to celebrate, and people's characters should be celebrated, whatever those characters are. People's achievements should be celebrated, but that doesn't mean that there isn't space for real extreme sadness and anger and a sense of the tragedy of things.
Yeah.
That's okay too.
Absolutely. I think, I like using the term, which I think you probably do as well, that a good you can have a good funeral. You should have a good funeral, but that good funeral should incorporate everything. So there will be joy and there will be laughter
Mm.
and there will be a lot of sadness and
Yeah,
but that's a good funeral. It doesn't mean that the funeral of a whole has to just be this big celebration. And I think the
yeah.
biggest problem I have, which so mini rant coming along, is when I see
Embrace.
other people in our profession pushing the term celebration of life.
Yeah,
I don't feel that's fair on the families that people work with to say,
yeah,
it is a celebration of life. It is a funeral. When did we stop using this term and move into this trend of a celebration of life? It's a funeral, but of course we will also celebrate the life, the personality of the person who has died. But
yeah,
let's not
yeah,
suppress the grief of these people who have lost someone that was so important to them, because it
yeah,
helps
absolutely.
nobody, that grief will still be there.
Yeah, no, it absolutely will. And the grief, has the potential to be exacerbated by the funeral then not being the thing that they need it to be.
Yeah, yeah,
I was I was thinking about this and I thought the whole problem is exactly as you say, that people don't like the word funeral. They associate the word funeral with awful experiences that they've had. Now, I'm not saying that, funerals are enjoyable. That wouldn't be the correct word to use
no,
for them, but good and satisfying and helpful and healing.
yeah,
Good funerals can be all of those things and should be. All a funeral is an observance for a person after they have died. So when someone says, "Oh, do you do funerals or celebrations of life?" Well, to me, and I know to you, there is no distinction.
no,
But I think that, like you, that there is a tendency towards celebration of life, as an avoidance of the word funeral, just as there's a tendency towards someone having passed away as an avoidance of using the word death. And
yeah,
and quite frankly, I feel like that needs reclaiming. That needs
definitely.
reclaiming. We need to, like you call a spade a spade, we need to call a funeral a funeral. That's what
Yeah,
it is. There's happiness in it and there's joy in it and there's fond remembrances and laughter because you're remembering the person, but then there is also everything else that goes along with having lost that person, and it isn't a binary thing.
no, no, absolutely not. And I think we did touch, I'm sure, in the language episode that we did about the term, or we have in another one anyway, but the term, we don't want people to feel sad. We don't want to make people sad. We don't want, so people are worried about that. But then, they're, yeah, by that of trying to protect other people.
Mm,
One, you can't, can you? And you can't protect people
no,
from the sadness that comes from grief and the death of
no,
a person that they loved. You can't, because that grief will be there and that sadness will be there. But
yeah, and it isn't there because of the funeral, is it? I know we had
no.
this conversation, I think, in the direct cremation chat we
Ah,
had.
yes, it was. You're
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah, I think, this kind of idea that, well, a funeral will be upsetting. It's the death that's upsetting. The funeral is the opportunity to honor, celebrate the person,
yeah,
but also to mourn the death and to try and find some healing. That's the first step forward on that journey that will take you for the rest of your life, because we
yeah,
never stop grieving.
yeah,
um yeah, and it's fear again, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is fear. And I was just thinking, I do remember another lady that I worked with who did, she obviously you have like a meeting after a funeral, which some people call a wake, some people just call
Mm,
a gathering, and she wanted the funeral service to be quite traditional, and it was quite somber. It did have some elements to it where we shared some funny stories and people laughed and smiled and remembered them, but the funeral service was very much that. But then at the end she said to me, I'd like you to tell people that we're then going on to this pub, and at the pub that will then be a celebration of his life. And I really
Yeah.
liked that. So
Yeah.
they had that funeral service which offered people the opportunity to grieve and to support each other and to acknowledge their grief and their sadness, as well as
Yeah.
remembering his life. But then at the celebration of life at the pub afterwards, they had
Yeah.
his favourite music, his favourite food, they had a slideshow of photos, and other people spoke. They had an
Yeah.
open floor, and people
Lovely.
just shared funny stories and memories. And I liked that balance and that idea that she had. And
Yeah.
she just seemed to get it, that that funeral was so important
Yeah.
for them and their family and friends.
Yeah. I really love that, Lindsay, and I do think that that separation is really a healthy thing, and because when 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 you use the word somber, that's almost, it's almost indicative of like putting something on,
Yeah.
as though it's something that isn't a part of us.
Mm,
Um, but it's right to feel somber when somebody dies. It's right to um be deeply, deeply affected by that. And we do a disservice to people by not letting them have the space
yeah.
that they need to acknowledge that. And you can do those somber things, those very serious things, but in a way that has the tone of uplift, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if that does.
No, it
So,
does. It does make sense.
you're talking about, the loss of the person and how that impacts on people. But I mean, I don't know whether this is a me thing. Just become a bit more conscious of it recently, where I feel like there's more kind of sort of life philosophy coming into some of my wordings for funerals,
Mhm.
and I think it's particularly because I've had a few, perhaps more than usual lately, that are people who have either been difficult people or have had difficult lives.
Mhm.
And maybe they've been people with addiction, or maybe people who've had challenges in their upbringing and it's affected them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
um and very often it's hard to acknowledge that for people, and people are always very clear to me that they don't want to lie, but at the
Mhm.
same time they don't want to dwell.
Yeah.
And that then, I suppose, has kind of opened a bit of a door for me in terms of writing ceremonies like that, in which I think it's helpful to say, this person was no angel, but who of us is? Who
Yeah.
of us is easy to love every day of our lives? Well,
Yeah.
none of us, you
Yeah.
know, and actually to kind of broaden that out so that, it is a somber thought,
Mhm.
that this person had problems, had difficulties and challenges in their life. But at the same time, well, that's just being a human, and let's
Yeah.
all just have a moment to stand together, to sit together, to just say, geez, like human life is really hard.
Yeah.
I think a good funeral can give you that moment of that short time of relating to other people on that level.
Yeah.
And I think that's a massive part of it. And I
Yeah.
don't think you could do that in a celebration of life.
No. No. That's it. I totally agree. Yeah, you would just wouldn't really have the space for it in a celebration of life. Whereas
Yeah.
sort of a funeral service, or how we run our funeral services and how I feel funeral services should be run, is you sort of take the people that are present on a journey,
Yeah.
and you allow them that space to grieve, you allow them a
Yeah.
time to offer them some comfort and some hope for the future, and help them to sort of look ahead and hold on to certain memories. And
Yeah.
yes, in a lot of cases as well, we have some laughter, and sometimes lots of laughter,
Yeah. Yeah.
but also tears and all the other emotions, because that's what a life is. A life sees all of those emotions.
Yeah.
Um,
And that laughter isn't necessarily happiness of the moment. The laughter is the joy of remembering that
Yeah.
time or
Yeah,
that feature of that person. And that's how people should be celebrated in a funeral, through that,
definitely.
not by kind of, insisting, that everybody, and it's not actually about clothes, is it? It's about tone,
Yeah,
kind of by saying to somebody, come to the celebration of life
yeah,
for Kirsty, you are from the outset saying to them, this is a joyful occasion,
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
not, and
yeah,
it shouldn't be,
yeah,
you know. And
definitely.
that's not to say that, we relish making it a morbid occasion or a
No,
depressing occasion, because I don't think that they are,
no,
I think too many people have been to too many ineffective, I'm going to use the word bad, funerals,
yeah,
where it's been very dour, where the person delivering the ceremony has. Do you ever hear? Do you ever hear somebody delivering a ceremony whilst you're waiting to go into yours and think to yourself, is that your normal voice? Do you ever think that? And I know we've all got a work voice. I know that we all, I know that it's very important. You and I were both trained to within an inch of our lives about diction and pace and, and pronouncing things properly. And so I acknowledge that we all have a work voice. But some of the funeral voices I hear, I think, come across as affected. They come across as
yeah,
not natural,
yeah.
not reflecting that, and I think that really impacts people as well.
It does, yeah, to have that, you need to be natural. Yes, you need to be really careful about your delivery, don't you? And
Mm.
how you do that. And that's where, a lot of our training and our further training is coming in, isn't it? But
It is.
but yes, so if you're not natural in your delivery, if you suddenly put on some different, although I am told by my family that I put on a posh voice when I deliver, but I just think I just speak properly when
Well,
I deliver,
exactly.
because
Yeah,
I just make sure I pronounce my words properly.
yeah, exactly. And
Which
we
is,
all do that, don't we? We do
yeah,
it when we answer the phone and we don't know who it
yeah,
is, or we do it when
yeah,
we're ringing, British Gas, or we do, and
yeah.
that's normal. I think the voices I'm talking about are the very somber voices.
Either the somber or the sort of like, oh God, I'm just going to say it. I apologize now, everyone. The sort of Jack and Ori style storytelling voice.
Ah,
And you
yep,
just think you want
yep,
everybody to relate to you when you're
yeah,
standing at the front there. And anyway, we're
yeah.
getting off on a rant, aren't we?
No, and I
But
think
I
I
think,
think it's all right to have opinions, isn't it? It's not
yeah,
saying, there are some people who expect funerals to be hugely traditional, expect the person standing at the front to be
incredibly
dressed all in
formal and
black,
yeah,
to be very somber.
yeah,
Um, People who have chosen me as their celebrant don't get that, and
yeah,
if they need that, they get it from somewhere else, and
yeah,
that's fine,
yeah.
so it's not kind of dissing anybody else's work method. It's
No,
more, because we all do that a little bit, it's more, being natural, because actually by affecting that real kind of somber tone and sort of being more morbid, for want of a better word, is making funerals really other. And
yeah,
actually it's much more healthy, I believe, to it's just another thing that we all do in our lives.
yeah.
um and by building it up as this huge other thing, we're not helping.
No, no, definitely not. And I know, there are times when families ask me to include things. Had one in a friend's funeral actually, and I'm asked to include things that, you know, make people feel uncomfortable because they are heavily on the celebratory side. And I'm just really
Yeah,
careful then how I deliver that and how I
yeah,
introduce it. So, for example, um, karaoke to a very loud song where you're also going to ask people to be up and standing and singing and dancing to it. I think it's wrong for us to just say to everybody, right, so and so would want you to do this. You need to get up, you need to sing. So I always just introduce it and say that the family or person that has died, whatever their name is, wanted this song to be included. They love to sing and dance to this. So this is your opportunity. If you would like to, then please do join in. But otherwise, feel free to just sit or stand and remember them when they sang this song, or imagine them, or hear their voice in your head. So you're having that really upbeat celebratory end that maybe that person or the family want, but you're saying to other people, "Do you know, it's okay if you don't want to join in. It's okay if
Yeah.
you are not feeling able to be this big singer, dancer, celebratory person at this
Yeah.
time." So you just get the balance. And for me, it's about
Yeah.
looking after everybody in the room, giving the
That's
family what they
yeah.
want, but taking care of everybody. I don't want anybody to leave that room and think, "Oh, that just didn't feel right," or I felt
Mm,
uncomfortable with that. I try and make sure I word things in a way that say to someone, "You know, it's okay if you don't want to do this." Does that
yeah.
make sense?
It makes total sense, and
Yeah.
the phrase that you just used about looking after everybody in that room, I actually find really moving, Linz, because that
Mm,
is exactly what it is. You are conscious that you want everybody to feel as okay as they can in order to get what they need from
yeah.
it. And the thought of, our Elkie calls it forced fun, it's her absolute worst thing. She absolutely can't bear the thought that and this is the point that we all get up and sing and dance. Well,
Yeah.
on a normal day, I might not want to do that. So,
Yeah.
why would I want to on that day? And
Yeah.
I think, interestingly, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about the Lord's Prayer. Now, so although we can do religious content because we are independent celebrants, the religious content that I tend for people to ask for is the Lord's Prayer,
Yeah.
because it's something that they remember from childhood, that they're comfortable with, that they feel is just an opportunity for that kind of like shared moment together of a blessing. And my experience of the Lord's Prayer has been, when I've been at other funerals or weddings or whatever, that that the person who's leading the service has just set off saying it, and people then either join in or they don't. Now, I don't have belief. I'm an atheist.
Mhm.
Um, so when I'm about to deliver the Lord's Prayer, which I do very rousingly, I have to say, I'd give it my all, even though it's not for me. Um, when I'm about to introduce that, I always will say something like, "If you feel that this will bring you comfort, please feel free to recite the words along with me."
Yeah.
Or, if in this moment it feels right for you to bow your head, then please do that.
Yeah.
And it's just, and it's giving that explicit instruction that you do you.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same. I always say, somewhere along the lines of, invite those of you who would like
Yeah.
to join with me. But
Yeah.
it's
Don't
exactly
feel
that, isn't
obliged.
it? It's just making that service a safe space for everybody, and for them to grieve and take part as and when they want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. We've
Mm.
got it out of our system.
Yeah.
Celebration of life. We get it. We get why the term is used.
Totally get it. Yeah.
But
So
yeah, but it's not, a celebration of life is something different from a funeral.
yeah.
And I know that there's a subject that will be coming up that we're going to discuss this season, which is living funerals, which is
Yes.
also something we have, yeah, similar thoughts
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Mm.
That'll be an interesting one as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will put the link to the blog that I mentioned at the beginning, because it's quite a short one. It's an interesting read that sort of
Yeah.
has a similar feel to how we feel. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's it for today's.
It is. Thank you very much for sticking us back into your beautiful ears today. Hopefully, you've enjoyed it and you're going to stick with us for this next season that we are doing, which, as we explained, is going to be perhaps a little bit less formal, a little bit less done in our funeral voices, maybe.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Possibly. And hopefully, it's also going to involve some gorgeous guests who are going to come along
Yes,
and talk to us about their
exciting,
thoughts.
exciting. I'm looking forward
It
to that.
it is.
So
So for now, everybody, thank you for listening, and yeah, embrace the inevitable. We'll
it,
help you. We'll help you to do that.
we will. So thanks and bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.